Welcome back. This is another walk and talk, um, and today I'm just walking through a very sort of urban or suburban street in the King's Standing area, just heading off to uh, the Drop-in Community Cafe that our church run, and I wanted to talk a bit more. We're still talking about this. What's been going on with Donald Trump and JD Vance and Vladimir Zelensky, and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and how America has got involved in it. And I wanted to talk a bit about the specific deal that America have been pushing. It looks like it's going to get signed now between America and Ukraine for rare earth, for minerals. Ukraine is rich in these minerals, mineral deposits, and Trump has demanded that a deal is signed giving American rights and access and benefits, an American stake, an American interest in those mineral rights, so that America will benefit economically. And he's made two arguments for this. First of all, he's argued that this is the way that Ukraine can pay back America for its support, for the military aid, for other aid that has been provided to Ukraine throughout the conflict over these past 3 years. The argument that America has supported and therefore that the war has lasted long, Ukraine have been able to defend themselves because of America's involvement, America's help. And then secondly, he has argued that this is actually the best backstop, this is the best way for Ukraine to have security guarantees. His claim is that because American personnel, significant numbers of American civilians, will be in Ukraine to get involved in mining and the management and the processing, that Russia would be reluctant to attack with American civilians in place, and therefore that will help guarantee the peace. In fact, JD Vance, you may remember, infamously said that that is a greater guarantee of security than, I think, quote, than a couple of countries that have no experience of fighting a war committing to put 20,000 troops into Ukraine. And it's interesting because Vance has backtracked on who he had in his sights when he made that claim, that grand claim, and said that he didn't mean Britain and France. But those are the countries that have actually been specifically, wisely or unwisely, specifically offering to put boots on the ground. And as you know, it's a nonsense to say that, because those are the very countries that have been active in military conflicts, in Iraq, in Britain's case, in Afghanistan and Libya in both cases, and in other situations as well. So the experience is there. And Britain, in fact, has long-term experience of providing military support into trouble zones, into urban trouble, conflict areas, whether that's staying in Iraq and Afghanistan or going or being there in Northern Ireland as well. But those are the two arguments, and I just want to just get us to think through whether or not they are true, whether or not they're sustainable arguments. And I want to just say that no, they're not. They are not credible arguments at all. Let's deal with them in reverse order. So, but what about this claim that this guarantees Ukraine's safety? I want to suggest it doesn't. There's a couple of reasons here. One, because those rare earths, those mineral deposits, are concentrated in particular areas, and so that means that in effect, President Trump has made it clear which bits of Ukraine he cares about. And that leaves us with the question of what happens should Russia seek to move on to other parts of Ukraine, in effect bypassing those areas. Do they need to worry about the presence of Americans in Ukraine? And secondly, what happens if Ukraine, if those areas come under attack? I think the most likely thing that will happen is that the Americans will act quickly to evacuate their people. That's what we tend to see in those situations. You don't tend to see that acting as a deterrent. What you tend to see is that the other country quickly removes their personnel from the area because they don't have any of a stake in the area, do they? I think it also makes not just Ukraine, but also the wider world less safe, because President Trump is beginning to make clear where his ethics, where his values lie, where his priorities lie, and therefore what he would consider acceptable for others. That he's making a statement that America wants to get its hands on rare resources and on land and on economic interests, and that America is prepared to do whatever is necessary to get those things. Now remember that the United States has also been making these same kind of noises, the offer to purchase Greenland, the demand for the return of the Panama Canal, that America is involving itself in economic war, economic conflict with Canada, with Mexico, with China, with Europe, and that a lot of that is about actually seeking to influence economic policy within those countries. And so the mineral deal and all of the gamesmanship, the shaking down in the White House, the withdrawal of military aid and then of security intelligence to get Vladimir Zelensky back to Washington as quickly as possible to sign a favourable deal for the United States. All of those things are sending messages and signals to Vladimir Putin, to Xi in China, concerning Ukraine, concerning Taiwan, to every wannabe regional strongman everywhere from Somalia to the Congo to South America, The message he's sending is that's how the world functions. That's how it's going to be. I'm basically providing you don't step on American interests, so providing you don't step on our area of influence, we're going to turn the blind eye to what you do. And that is deeply concerning. Then secondly, let's go back to the original claim that this is about Ukraine paying the United States back. Now, three sides to this, three things to consider on this. Here's the first thing. Back in 2001, when America itself came under attack from Al-Qaeda terrorists, a number of countries, Britain and others, stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States, and there was significant cost to doing that. The cost was both economically as financially, because we put troops on the ground and there was a cost to that. There was the cost in the loss of life, and there was the cost of being identified with the United States, which meant that France and Britain and Spain and other countries themselves suffered shocking and horrific terror attacks. But there hasn't been any suggestion that America should pay us back. Because we recognise that there were international responsibilities and moral duty on us to stand with our allies, to stand with our friends, to stand with the victims. Secondly, the United States are not the only country that have been providing support into Ukraine, and in fact I don't believe that they are the largest, that they provide the largest amount of support. More support is coming from Europe, the EU and the United Kingdom. So the idea that America can leap in, use its muscle and threaten in order to extract payment is the question. But what about everyone else that's been involved here? It's this very selfish, very grasping way of behaving, isn't it? And then thirdly, actually the question about whether or not anything should be owed at all. And I think, first of all, coming back to that principle that we saw after 9/11, that recognition that you don't do these things for economic gain. You don't even do them to get payback, to get equity. Important biblical principle here for Christians as well. When Jesus in Luke's Gospel warns those that follow him not to be always thinking about, am I going to get payback here? Can they give back? Don't invite those to dinner, your friends and relatives and those that are wealthy, so that you will get invited back to their place. Look out for the poor, the widow, the orphan, the needy, the vulnerable. Well, there's a good principle there, isn't there? More widely. But also because the Budapest Accords actually placed obligations on the United States, Britain and France, China and Russia as well, but obviously they've made their position clear. And what the Budapest Accord was about was this. After the breakup of the USSR, Ukraine was suddenly a significant nuclear power. It had many of the nuclear weapons from the old USSR based there. and under its control. And a lot of people, Russia, but also the West, were nervous, were unsettled about the potential risks, instability, and what could go wrong as things deteriorated. And so there was strong pressure for Ukraine to give up its nuclear weapons, effectively to give them back to Russia, so that Russia remained the sole nuclear power within the old Soviet Union. Of course, if Ukraine had nuclear weapons, that would have been a deterrent against Russia invading, both in 2014 and 3 years ago. So in return for Ukraine giving up her weapons, her nuclear weapons, the signatories, reminder, including Britain and France and the US, made a commitment to ensure the defence and security of Ukraine. Now, that's difficult, that's complex when it's Russia that is attacking. And so there's been that nervousness, that understandable concern and reluctance about not getting drawn in directly into the conflict. But Britain and France recognised that at least the minimum of supplying arms and intelligence, that was us doing the minimum in terms of fulfilling our treaty obligations, our obligations under international law. So the United States isn't entitled to a payment back because the United States has obligations. And this week, by turning off the supply of arms, by turning off the intelligence, America very overtly and very deliberately defaulted on her international obligations, which again raises concerns about whether America will follow through on its treaty obligations under NATO to come to the aid of any of the alliance members if they suffer attack. Again, that sets a dangerous precedent in the world. So this deal really is unjustifiable, and whilst in the end we may kind of have to accept it, and in the end I think it is for Ukraine, I think it's for Zelensky to decide what he needs to do to protect and safeguard his country. What isn't right is for the United Kingdom, through our Prime Minister, through Peter Mandelson as the US ambassador, that isn't right for us to have been involved in putting pressure on Ukraine to sign that deal. It's not right for America to demand it. No one should be benefiting economically from this. And in fact, to go further, our Prime Minister should have been saying very publicly these kind of deals are wrong. I doubt there's anything we can do about it. I don't think there's any kind of international sort of legal system that the US acknowledges that could enforce Budapest and say, no, actually, this would be a breach of it. But I think we've got a responsibility to at least speak up and say, these are the principles that we hold to. Well, I'd love to know your thoughts, comments, even further questions, discussion. Please feel free to stick them in the comments below.